Okay, let's continue our conversation on Stoicism, going over the Moral Letters by Lucius Annaeus Seneca. We have landed on letter 72, which is a pretty long one, and as a result, I don't really want to read you the entire letter, but I'm going to read you a couple of sections from it. Still, I should have some project to work on, even in these busy days, entirely full though they are. For there will always be some new occupation to replace the one before it. We plant them like seeds, each producing many more. Besides, we keep giving ourselves postponements. Once I finish this, I will devote my whole mind to it, and as soon as I get through this troublesome task, I will give myself over to study. We ought not to wait for our spare time to practice philosophy. Rather, we should neglect other occupations to pursue this one task for which no amount of time would be sufficient, even if our lives were prolonged to the greatest extent of human lifespan. You might as well not bother with philosophy if you're going to practice it intermittently. For it does not stay in one place during an interruption. No, it is like some object that springs back after being compressed. Once you let up, you revert to where you were before. You have to take a stand against occupations. Rather than reducing your encumbrances, you should get rid of them altogether. There is no time that is not well suited to these healing studies. Yet, there are many who fail to study when caught up in the problems that give one reason to study. I'll move on to another section in just a second, but first this one. This point has been made a number of times. Epictetus made it. I know we talked about that when we were going over the Enchiridion. But it is a vital aspect that I think people forget about. It's very easy to become, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, but it's very easy to become a good-weather Stoic. It's very easy to say, oh, well, everything's going great in my life. Yeah, I love Stoicism. It's so great. It's so useful. Yeah, it is, I know. But it's mainly useful when things are bad in your life, when things are not going as planned, when things are frustrating, when things are hard and difficult and upsetting. That's when you need it the most. And if you can't practice it at those times, you can only practice it when everything is going well, well, then you have a problem. And the problem is that you don't have something at hand when you need it the most. That's problematic. So Seneca's point is a good one, and I think a vital one in many ways. Namely, you must practice incessantly. Stoicism, or for that matter, any type of behavioral change that you're trying to accomplish, has to be a matter of something being done all the time. All the time. Not just once or twice a week. Not just when everything is wonderful in life, because it's really, really easy when everything in your life is going well to say, oh, it's very easy. Some things in life are within your control. Other things are not within your control. Have another cheeseburger. That's not very helpful, right? It's much harder to say that when things come crashing down in smaller ways or larger ways. That's when you really need to have this kind of response at hand. But you won't have it at hand if you don't practice it. Stoic practice, just like any type of behavioral change or changing thought patterns, is a matter of continuous practice, incessant practice, doing it again and again and again and again. Only if you do that will your way of thinking actually change. Will you actually be able to move past certain things? Will you actually be able to fully ingrain that type of thinking in your everyday life? And this is very difficult. And I still have moments, I've been doing this for a number of years now, I still have moments where I know I kind of need it, but where it doesn't come easily to me. And that usually is a signal to me of maybe reread the Enchiridion. It's short, it's easy, it's a fast read, but reacquaint yourself with these principles. Do that because you forget. And it's not just you or me, it's everyone. We as a species tend to forget these kinds of things really quickly. We try to change our behavior, we may be able to do it, and then we slip up and we slide down a slope again because we've given up on what we should have continued to practice. And that, I think, is it's difficult. It's also frustrating, right? That that's how our brains seem to work. But there is a way out of that, and that is to continue practicing this kind of stuff, to continue practicing Stoic thought, whatever you have, you're trying to do. But if you're watching this, I'm assuming something with Stoicism. A second passage in this letter that I thought was quite interesting is this one. I will tell you what I mean by a mind that has been healed, one that is content in itself, that has confidence in itself, one that realizes that all those things we mortals wish to have, all the favors we give and ask in return, have no bearing whatever on happiness. For that to which any addition can be made is not complete, and that which can suffer diminution is not eternal. If cheerfulness is to endure, one must rejoice in one's own resources. All ordinary objects of longing are in flux, this way and that. Fortune's gifts are not ours to keep. We want all sorts of things. Everybody does. We want all sorts of things. And in pursuing those things, we get distracted. We kind of stray from the way, or the true path, call it what you will. And that leads to distractions that can then actually harm us. We can become so bogged down and obsessed with certain things that we stop paying attention to what really matters. We kind of lose track of the bigger picture, what we're trying to do. And those kinds of distractions, although in some ways they can be fun, it can be fun to try to pursue something and try to obtain something and maybe save up for something or whatever, something like that. Sure, but you have to be careful it does not become an obsession, because once it gets to that stage, things get very complicated and confusing, and certainly I think more negative. Things can really become unpleasant and harder for yourself when you lose track of that bigger picture, which is something we kind of talked about in the last video as well. Right? To make decisions, keep your whole life in mind. Think about what all this means in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of things. The final section that I thought was very interesting is number 9 here, 9 and 10. A person who has good intentions and is making progress, but who is still a long way from the summit, moves alternately upward and downward. Now he mounts to the sky, now he is brought back to earth. Novices devoid of training plummet downward without end. They fall into the chaos of Epicurus, a boundless void. There is yet a third contingent, those who are on the verge of wisdom. Although they have not yet reached it, they have it in sight, within striking distance as it were. No longer are they buffeted by the waves, no longer do they feel an undertow. Though not yet landed, they are already within the harbor. That's where we want to be. That's the point of Stoicism, that we try to achieve that. We try to achieve that point. We rise and we fall. This is very normal. We try our best to achieve what we want to achieve, but it is hard at times. It can be very difficult. And unfortunately, we do display this pattern of we go up a little bit, step back, maybe go up a little bit, step back, we go up a little bit and step back. And that keeps repeating itself, and that's okay. It's okay. It's a normal part of mental growth. You can call it spiritual growth if you want it, like whatever, but you're doing something to make yourself a better person. And that is something that takes a lot of time. A lot of time and a lot of effort. And in making that effort, sometimes you will slip up. And that's okay. You can't kick yourself too hard for that, because this is a natural aspect of making that progress. Just keep going. You can't give up. You can't let that bring you down. You just do it again and again. You keep doing it. And that's all there's to it. And then you continue to make progress. And like I've said many times before, progress is enough. And that's not something we should forget. At the end of the day, that's what matters. Not being perfect, because none of us are. But everybody can try to make progress. And that's good enough. That was it for today. I hope this was useful. Let me know what you think about this letter. and about the sliding up and down and how you deal with that, because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. I know that I certainly do. We'll be back next week with more talk about Stoicism. Thank you for watching. Bye.